Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Faith Chats. I'm your host, Andrew Burnett, and as always, our topics today are faith, family, freedom, and America. Today, I have with me special guest Debbie Wuthnow of iVoterGuide. Welcome to the program.
Good to be here, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being the guest today. Share with us a little bit about those who don't know, a little bit about iVoterGuide and the background of how it came to be.
Well, iVoterGuide is a voter guide, not surprisingly, based on our name. It's an internet voter guide, which is where the little I can come in. We're a Christian ministry. We were founded in 2008 in Texas by a Christian guy who was politically engaged and actually lobbied the legislators in Texas and had this light bulb moment that I've never voted an intelligent ballot. I know most of the state legislators, but I've never personally voted an intelligent ballot from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket. But he knew what to look for. So he started researching his candidates in Dallas County, top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket, gathered who'd given him money, who they'd given money to. He knew, those who'd served in the legislature, how to get scorecards based on groups on how they'd voted. He figured out who'd endorsed them. He sent every candidate a questionnaire, filled a binder with information on candidates, and then gathered friends around his conference table, friends like David Barton and, other very conservative activists, and they all graded each candidate. So iVoterGuide began with the concept of looking what candidates do, not what they say. And that guy's name was Richard. Another guy out of Austin was a retired IBM programmer who said, I can do a voter guide on the internet, but I don't know how to do a voter guide. God brought those two people together, and iVoterGuide was born, really with the goal to equip Christians to vote an intelligent ballot, right? So we do the deep dive research. We make it available at iVoterGuide.com. Anybody can go there. In fact, we will say we create personalized voter guides for every address in America, including yours. You enter your address, and then you just see the races and candidates on your ballot. So you don't need to know you're in Congressional District 3, you're in State Senate District 10, and, State House District. You don't even need to know what school district you're in. When we cover school boards, if we're covering them, you enter your address, and we'll just show you those races. All that research, like Richard started gathering, plus an evaluation of every candidate based on their political philosophy, ranges from far left to far right. But the data is all there for you to see yourself. It's just research. Our goal is truth and to provide voters truth and clarity.
So, I'm excited to have you on today because our topic today is atheists are outpacing Christians in political activism. I see it as a major issue. And even during the election, when we were all voting for Trump, hopefully the Christians were, it bothered me that Christians are just not getting out to the polls like they should. And you hear, or at least I did on my social media, I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. Or you hear, I'm just not going to participate because my vote doesn't matter. Share with us a little bit about what you've seen.
Well, there is so much to talk about in all of that. So to say your vote doesn't matter is a lie from the devil. Every vote matters. Every vote counts. And in fact, the founders saw to it that government gets its power from the consent of the governed. That's in the Declaration of Independence. So they knew that that was where the power comes. This is a unique government where the power comes up through the people. We, the people, get to grant our consent. And if you're not granting your consent, you're absquessing your I don't know the word. You're giving up your power. You're letting other people choose for you. And that's just not biblical. I mean, when you go to a marriage ceremony, the old fashioned ones, and they say, speak now or forever hold your peace. So that policy applies, right? So if you're not speaking and making your voice heard, which at a minimum is to go vote, you've let somebody else choose for you. And when you say it's the lesser of two evils, I will point out, as even though sometimes we have some really good candidates, they're all human, and we know that humans are all sinful. So there is going to be no Jesus isn't on the ballot, right? So you have to pick between the two that are there, and it's better to pick somebody who's 80% for our policies or biblical policies than somebody who's 20% for our policies or 0% for our policies. So there's not ever going to be a perfect candidate. We just have to get as close as we can. And we got to be salt and light. You can't be salt and light when you're sitting in your home in your or in your pews and not getting out of the church. And, atheists are actively against God. They're not agnostic. They are, they deny actively that God exists. So their religion is getting God out of every aspect of culture, of businesses, of schools, of government. And so they are definitely going to be voting. And in elections where there's very low voter turnout, the atheists are the ones that we can count on to show up. The people who are not showing up and making their voice heard is the church, are the believers. Some turn out, but in these, especially in school board elections, Andrew, I don't know if you knew, the turnout in a school board election is typically just 6% of voters. And that typically includes the teachers unions and the school district employees. And that's how we get what's happened in the schools. But there are so many churches that have enough people that are Christians that if they voted, they could make a difference and swing those elections.
So, do you believe, I have to ask you this, the Christian body today, in many areas, you hear, well, we shouldn't involve faith and politics together. Politics shouldn't be in the church. Do you believe that the reason why Christians aren't going to the voting polls is because pastors aren't addressing it appropriately?
100%. Yes. There are pastors who do talk about cultural issues like Charlie Kirk was, right? He just talked about what was in the Bible on all those issues. And there are good churches out there and good pastors who do it, but it is not the majority. It is hopefully growing. I just came from what was called Liberty Pastor Boot Camp, where they were trying to train pastors in how to and why they should speak those truths and speak to every cultural issue, the transgenderism, the even China, socialism, free market, trying to get them to talk about those things. The problem is, Andrew, that the left attacked it in education, right, to get to the kids, but they also went to the seminaries. So the pastors were not trained in how to speak to these issues, and they're having to either self-train or go to other aspects. As a congregant, I'm taking it on myself. If my pastor doesn't talk about it, number one, I'm going to tell my pastor he should and encourage him that he really should. But I'm also going to make sure that I understand those issues and that I'm conversant and I can speak like Charlie would. Be prepared to give an answer, not only to what you believe, but why you believe it. Have that open discord so that you can begin to disciple other people about why we should be voting, why we should be participating, what the Bible says about all of those issues that are on the forefront of culture right now.
And I believe that believers don't really grasp the concept that if they stay home and while the atheist and the left, which is very demonic, organize, America will drift from the biblical organization and the foundation that it was founded on.
Well, it has drifted from what it was founded upon, and it's drifted because they took the Bible out of schools, they took prayer out of schools, they took the 10 Commandments away. The atheist and the left has been chipping away at the scriptural foundation of America to the point of rewriting history so that the next generation doesn't even know that we were founded on biblical principles. So what I love that one of the things that is happening right now, and we've got a great opportunity, is in America's birthday of the Declaration of Independence that happens next year. And the White House, through President Trump, is really making a push to make sure that people understand. And let's talk about America's history. Let's talk about what the Declaration says, why it says what it said. Let's talk about the faith of the founding fathers, the biblical literacy that was so common back in that day, but is almost non-existent today. What 6% of Americans have a biblical worldview? So we need to get back to the truth of why we were, founded, why we have a republic. We don't have a democracy. We have a republic. It requires a moral and, a faith-based people. And that's what we need to get back to, but we can if we work on it.
So how do you believe that we can get Christians to the polls and hearing our biblical opinion on cultural issues?
I think that well, number one, we always have to pray. God's in control. We need to pray. We need to do our personal part. There's a self-government part. There's a make sure you're doing what you need to do. Are you registered to vote? Are you voting at every election? Do you know what the Bible says about those issues? And then you expand your circle. Do your kids know that they need to vote in every election? Are they ready? Is your husband? Are your parents? How about your neighbors? How about the other parents on the soccer team or the swim team, or the other members of your church, your pastor? So we need to use our influence for good to encourage people to get involved. iVoterGuide has fabulous resources on educating you on all those principles, giving you a really easy tool to make, because once people finally agree, okay, I know I need to vote. The next question they have is, but who do I vote for? And that's really why iVoterGuide exists. So we can work on them on understanding, participating in government. God created government in Romans 13. Even Paul was preaching in the public square, in the ecclesia. We can do the same thing. We are called to do the same thing. The IRS can't stop us. All of that Johnson Amendment and all of those things is another lie that's coming from the left. We can be involved. We need to be involved. And iVoterGuide gives you resources to do so.
So, how is iVoterGuide already preparing for upcoming elections, including the 2026 midterms?
Well, first of all, there's elections before 2026. So right now I don't know the reach of your podcast or where your listeners are going to be, but there are elections this year in 2025, November, in New Jersey for their governor and their state legislature, in Virginia for governor, lieutenant governor, other statewide offices and their state legislature. Virginia's has had a Republican governor. That race is going to be really key. Their state legislature is currently in the hands of the Republicans, but by a thread. So the who controls that state legislature is on the ballot this November. We're also covering ballot measures this year in California on their redistricting, in Maine and in Texas on voting requirements and bail requirements and various social issues on the ballot. But then, and also some school board races. We've started to cover school board races. We've got some in about a dozen states. So go to iVoterGuide.com, either enter your address to see what we've got or scroll down and click on the map, your state in the map to see what we're covering. But the first filing date for 2026 is just 1 month away. So candidate filing deadline in Illinois is November 3rd of 2025. So we are definitely gearing up already for the primary election in 2026. We know it's midterms, so all of the House is going to be on the ballot. A third of the Senate's going to be on the ballot. 46 states will have their state legislature on the ballot, and we will be covering the vast majority of that. We'll be covering all the federal races. We'll cover the statewide races in 40 states, state legislative races in 32 states. We'll be covering dozens of ballot measures that are at the statewide level, Supreme Court justice races at the statewide level, State Board of Education, and then also some key school board races, primarily in swing states and swing districts, because that information can empower voters to turn out at a higher level. So we're staffing up, we're training, we're getting ready. 2026 is literally, the sun is rising. It's already starting.
And here's the amazing thing for pastors. The IRS has recently released a ruling that allows churches to endorse political candidates without losing their tax exempt status.
Well, they made official what we always knew was kind of true. We knew that pastors could talk about things from the pulpit, even though, they're afraid to not do this. But they went one step further and said, pastor, you can endorse a candidate on and mention it even in your sermons. You can talk about it in your church service. You can put it on your website. It is okay to talk about, that we want more biblical candidates. We want more Christians to run for office. It's okay to challenge your congregation to step up and run for office. And it's even okay to put up a list of the candidates that you as a pastor think your congregation should vote for. So the excuses are being removed from the table. They'll continue to offer them, but the arguments are solid that they're allowed to do these things and they need to do these things.
Now, here's what we don't want. As a Christian leader myself, that doesn't give you the opportunity to get into the pulpit and endorse the wrong candidate. God has given you the pulpit to endorse who he has spoken about biblically.
Well, and God does give clear guidelines in Exodus chapter 18 when Moses just got the people across, God led them across the into the promised land, and his father-in-law showed up, and Moses was sitting there and being the judge for all huge long lines. Every little dispute went before Moses, and his father-in-law said, "Hey, Moses, you can't be doing all of this. You need representatives of fives, of tens, of fifties, of thousands, and let those representatives hear the disputes when they get really, you hear a select few of them." And he gave qualifications for those representatives. Those are the same qualifications we should have for those people we elect. So, pastor, look at, are they able men of God? Are they qualified to do the job? Do they fear God? Are they men of truth? And do they hate dishonest gain? Are they incorruptible? Are they believers? And above being coerced. So those are the qualifications. You can look for those on candidates. iVoterGuide is looking for all of those things. We're looking for men of truth who don't tell lies. We're looking for men of God, and we look at their to see if they have a biblical worldview as a factor in how we rate those candidates. So iVoterGuide helps make it easy for you pastors to know what to look for and which candidates are worthy of your endorsement.
So, how do you hope that Christians utilize iVoterGuide to become educated about upcoming elections?
Well, I would pray that they would vow that every time they would vote in every election. And before they go vote, they'll go to iVoterGuide.com first and get their personalized ballot. We're not going to cover every race on your ballot down to the local level. We're just not there yet. We're a ministry and we don't have the bandwidth to go that far down the ballot, but we'll get you started. And then you can spend your time on researching those further down the ballot races. We'll take care of the ones up higher. I would encourage you to sign up for iVoterGuide's emails. We send them just once a week, and it's an educational topic. You don't know what the Bible says about immigration because your pastor doesn't teach it. We've written an article about it. You don't know what the Bible says about parental rights. We've written an article about it. I don't know how elections work or what are these offices and what do they mean. We've written articles that comes out once a week. You can get them into your email inbox as we write them. You can also go to iVoterGuide.com and click on articles and insights, and you can search and find and read the articles we've written. There's probably hundreds of them on our website. So we've given you a tool to become educated in how government works and basic civics and what your responsibility is. And then when you're on our email list, if you're not paying attention other than, there's elections more than every 2 years, we will email you when there is an election in your area so that if it's a special election or a local school board election we're covering, we'll keep you engaged, we'll keep you informed so that you can let your light shine in the civic arena.
So you shared y'all don't cover all the way down to the local election. What areas do y'all actually cover?
Well, we cover all the federal races in all 50 states. We cover statewide races like governor, secretary of state, lieutenant governor, attorney general. If it's on every ballot in the state, I live in Texas. It includes railroad commissioner, state board of education, Supreme Court, Court of Criminal Appeals, all those statewide offices. We will cover the Republican primary, all the candidates in that primary, as well as every candidate in a contested race in the general election in 40 states. Think mostly red states, but there are even some blue states where we cover that. And then for state legislative elections, so your state senator, your state representative, the people that represent you in the state capitol, we will cover all of that in the 32 states. That's again mostly the red states where the Christians have a better chance of making an impact. We cover ballot measures, and we'll cover those in any state when they're related to right to life, gambling, marijuana, the social issues that Christians are the most impactful for, and where there's a really clear conservative and liberal position. We will research, not only what does the ballot say, but here's what a yes vote means Here's what a no vote means, because the language is really confusing. I think it's written by lawyers. So you go in and read that, and you don't know really what it does. So our team will give you clear language on what it will accomplish. We'll also give you the arguments with the source data of what each side is saying about the ballot measure. We'll let you know who's funding each side of the vote, as well as who's endorsed each side of the ballot measure, as well as which vote would be a conservative vote versus a liberal vote. And then we are covering school board races in some key states, probably about a dozen states. We'll do them in the larger districts. So like right now in Virginia, if you live in Loudoun County and you enter your address, you'll see your governor, your state senator, your state legislator, and then Loudoun County school board candidates, and which ones are conservative and which ones are liberal. So we will be covering over 13, maybe as many as 15,000 candidates in the 2026 election cycle.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for your time. I encourage folks to go to iVoterGuide.com to get more involved and to find out about iVoterGuide. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.
Be blessed.
You too.